Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Now that my two obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And I just came across an article this morning where Ronnie Coleman has announced that he might not ever walk again. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on scaling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Now, the thing with Ronnie Coleman, of course you guys know I'm not a bodybuilding fan. I'm not a bodybuilding fan, but I will at least respect Ronnie's work ethic. I have actually seen Ronnie Coleman train many years ago in person, and I'm not gonna lie, the dude was legitimately over the top with his training. I mean, I'm not gonna knock the work ethic because it was absolutely there, and it was probably some of the craziest work ethic I've ever seen, truth be told. So I'm gonna give credit where credit is due there. The dude trained his ass off at a level that none of us will ever do. None of us are ever going to do that. So here's the thing that we come down to. You know, he's talking about he's had his last surgery. He thinks money's an issue because, again, he felt like the doctor was possibly trying to make money on him, didn't give him possibly the best surgeries because he's like $2 million into something like 10 surgeries. And he thinks that might be a factor, but they are telling him he might not walk again. He's wheelchair bound. He will possibly never be able to walk again without assistance. Even though his latest surgery, he came out of the surgery good, he didn't recover from it well. The guy is legitimately beat up, busted up, banged up. And here's the thing that bothers me with some of this. People will see that and say, aha, see, that's what happens when you lift heavy. You know, as if what Ronnie Coleman did is something that any human being walking the face of the earth needs to be concerned about, who uses a moderate to zero amounts of anabolics. I mean, we need to be realistic here. There is a limit to the amount of muscle that you can put on your frame, right? There is a limit. Strength is limited by muscle mass. In other words, everyone out there, no matter how hard they train, how perfect they train, how heavy they train, without the use of copious amounts of substances in their body, and I do mean copious, you're only going to be able to get so strong. And here's what I'm going to say. The odds that you are going to get strong enough on any sort of proper training, no matter how heavy you actually get with the weight, the odds that you're actually going to be able to perform big exercises somewhat correctly through a full range of motion with enough weight to crush your bones is just about non-existent. The odds of anyone out there doing that who doesn't have some medical issue in some way that's allowing for it is pretty much non-existent. So that's what I would say to people. This idea that anyone out there thinks they need to be worried about lifting heavy because of Ronnie, you're being misled. You're being misguided. Ronnie Coleman not only was a genetic freak, but he used enormous amounts of drugs to carry enormous amounts of muscle mass, not just a little bit of stuff, enormous amounts. And he used piss poor technique on a lot of his lifts. And we need to talk about that because all these damaged discs and stuff in his back and the nerve damage and everything, because that was happening while he was still competing. He had problems already. But here's how you need to look at that. Look at the weights he was throwing around and the manner in which he did it, and really step back and assess, is anyone out there who's training correctly in any danger of ever getting even remotely close to the weights that he used? No. And what I mean is 700-pound legitimate squatters are pretty rare. They exist, but I mean drug-free 700-pound squatters, how many of those you think there even are? Seriously. Maybe a handful in the entire world. 99.9% of the population doesn't even have the genetic capability, if they train under the best coaches, to reach like a 700 raw squat to legit depth, right? What was Ronnie doing in videos? Partials where he didn't go to depth, wearing a squat suit, knee wraps, and doing reps with like 800 pounds. Okay, let's go back to the point I make about some equipped nonsense. All right, if you put artificial constraints in place, like a squat suit or knee wraps, yes, you're going to be able to squat more weight than what you would be able to put on your back raw. Therefore, you're going to be able to put more stress on your back than your muscles would ever physically allow you to do for a full range of motion. The same thing by doing partials. You're able to add more weight. So realistically speaking, putting 800 pounds on your back for reps, even for a heavily enhanced, in many cases, lifter, and actually squatting to death with that is insanely rare. Insanely rare. And when you start throwing artificial constraints in there and start skipping range of motion at the bottom so that you can put more weight on the bar, knee wraps, a squat suit, not hitting depth, yeah, you're going to be able to lift more weight. But is that really lifting more weight? No, you're just putting wear and tear on your spine. Now, I understand if you're a competitive power lifter and you squat equipped, but you also understand what you're doing to your body. You understand what you're doing to your body. I'm not a fan of that. I don't recommend you wear knee wraps. I don't recommend you use a squat suit. I don't recommend you use 4 grams of testosterone either. I mean, this is where a lot of these injuries come from. You know, you see that stuff. But realistically, had Ronnie just squatted raw, and wasn't using copious amounts of drugs, does anyone really think there would have at any point ever been 800 pounds sitting up on top of his back compressing down? No. No. Be honest. So what's the real culprit say on if squatting contributed? It's all this other factor. It's not the fact that he squatted as heavy as possible, because he would have never approached that sort of weight. Then you look at the deadlifts. You know, what do I tell you guys? Touch and go deadlifts damage your back. I say this all the time. We've seen him do touch and go deadlifts with 810 pounds, bouncing it off the floor on the second rep. All right, that can cause disc herniations. That can cause back damage. So if you're going to do touch and go deadlifts with 800 pounds, which, you know, again, how many people out there even have the ability to get 800 for a single, which there is no touch and go, you don't have to worry about it. Could even get close to 800 for a single. Most guys can't do that on drugs. That's rare even in the enhanced world. The natural world, come on. There's only, and even in the IPF where they're even drug tested, that doesn't even mean they're clean. 800-pound deadlifts are not normal, right? There are plenty of world record holders with sub 800-pound deadlifts in the IPF in various weight classes, including getting up into the heavies. In fact, I want to say strongest man in the IPF, super heavyweight, what's his name? I just said his name in another video. He barely pulls over 800 pounds, right? And he is the strongest drug-tested lifter in the entire world. So realistically, who in the hell is going to be doing touch and go deadlifts with 800 pounds? But here's what I'll tell you. I've seen guys hurt themselves with 500-pound touch and go deadlifts where you just tap it and bounce it off the floor on the following reps. Guys get hurt with 500 pounds. So the issue there is the technique being used, not necessarily just the amount of weight involved. Same thing, you go watch the way the guy rode. Throwing 585 pounds on a bar and doing cheat rows with it. You know, not strict rows. Because I remember someone had said, a coach had said they worked with him once to see what he could strict Pendlay row, and he could do like 350 strict, which is pretty insane. All right, and are you really going to get hurt doing that with a Pendlay? Probably not, even with his bone structure. But when you're lifting bone-crushing poundages and you're doing 10 to 12 cheat reps with a weight that's over 200 pounds heavier than you could row strict, even for a max off the floor, you don't think that contributes? It's bone-crushing poundages that he could lift as a result of drugs, massive drug abuse, and piss-poor form allowing him to get away with doing more, using external things to help him cheat the weight. So we're dealing with an amount of axial loading and spinal compression on a regular basis that had he, even with his genetics, had he not had a bunch of drugs in his system and just used cleaner form, he would have had hundreds of pounds less loaded up on his back. The problem is not lifting heavy, it's being stupid about it. It's about people not knowing their limits, not using some common sense. And that's the problem we come to with people like Ronnie. I mean, we could look at that and people say, well, he trained amazing and has all this. Well, it's like, yeah, now he spent $2 million of his fortune in back surgeries and he can't walk. So was it really worth it? Did it really get him anything? I mean, everyone's like, well, he had all this glory. Yeah, but look how much he's now spent. He spent $2 million of his fortune just on surgeries and he's in a wheelchair. I don't know if I'd call that quality of life. And what does it come down to? Doing stupid stuff. And I mean, that's the part you can't look at that and not say, oh, people say, oh, that's tragic, that's unfortunate, that's an accident. Not really. Common sense should tell you shouldn't be flopping around doing cheat rows with 585 on a row. You shouldn't be doing touch and go deadlifts with 800 pounds when we know touch and go deadlifts cause back injuries. So even with all the drugs he used, had he just actually lifted the weights he was capable of lifting raw and with good form, would he still even be in the same situation he's in? I don't know. Maybe not. So, I mean, we could come down to it really being self-inflicted. Does that make him a bad person? No. But it should be a warning to other people out there. And it's frustrating when you see people who say, oh, yeah, see, he got hurt because he lifted heavy, so don't lift heavy. That's terrible advice. There's other factors involved with how heavy he was lifting that have nothing to do with maximizing your potential, using good technique, using reasonable training volumes, right? Most people are in no danger of ever putting the sort of weights on their body that he was lifting with sloppy form and everything else, right? They're in no danger of that happening. And what he is dealing with isn't connective tissue tears and other stuff that we think of as injuries. It's actually crushing his back. Totally different animal. He exceeded what his skeleton was physically capable of supporting. And that doesn't happen without drugs, guys. That doesn't happen without drugs. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.